Sonic Team Jr. has done an admirable job at making SRB2 feel like a long-lost mid-90s Sonic game, with the unique gameplay and design philosophy that one would expect of a theoretical Sonic game released during such a turbulent time in Sega's history. But it's unfair to claim it as some pariah, with no links or ties to the games that would have theoretically come out before and after it. Obviously, it takes extremely heavy inspiration from the classic era of the Sonic franchise, and I'd argue that it takes even more specific inspiration from the level design and structure of Sonic 3. A good balance of speed and platforming, with most stages having wholly unique gimmicks and a larger scale, allowing for huge amount of pathways and secrets in each level, is a description I could use for either game. With that in mind, how well would the Sonic from Sonic 3 fare if he found himself transplanted into SRB2? Well, that's the question Blacknide was hoping to answer when he made S3 Sonic, and today, I'll be asking it once again as I review his work. The first thing to recognise with S3 Sonic is that this is much more of a tweak or revision of the base Sonic, more so than a new character in the vein of Adventure or X Sonic. You'll still take the same paths as you usually do, just with a fresh coat of paint, some tweaked abilities, and the occasional burst of new music. The biggest change isn't really something you can do anything about, because the way in which S3 Sonic most diverges with vanilla Sonic isn't with his jump ability or his revised spin dash, but rather with his new physics system. This will become immediately the very first time you jump as S3 Sonic. Indeed, you might even notice it before that, from the very first time you begin accelerating. But effectively, Blacknide has edited SRB2's physics to more closely resemble that of Sonic 3. I can't claim to be proficient enough in computer science to be able to compare the physics lure and tell you the exact specifics of what that entails, so as far as I can understand it, the changes seem to affect the angle and power of your jump, the acceleration curve, the power slopes having your momentum, how quickly you move, and how far you're knocked back by damage. Once again, I cannot confirm that is a conclusive list, or indeed whether that is all actually modified. It may just be placebo for some of them. But I can confirm that this is a pretty nice set of changes. It feels authentic to the game it's emulating, but it also feels pretty good in the context of playing SRB2, which is a balance a lot of mods that attempt this struggle with. It is a noticeable change that does cause you to change timings on certain jumps and allow you to pull off a few tricks you otherwise couldn't, but at the same time, outside of a few platforming heavy areas where the increased looseness of movement can cause you to slip off small platforms, it isn't so extreme a change that you find yourself unable to complete formerly innocuous parts of levels. Compare that to someone like Crash Bandicoot, whose emulation of his franchise's physics made him feel much too slow for the SRB2 world, or X Sonic, whose complete inability to navigate water made Deep Sea a terrifying prospect, and the difference is hopefully plain to see. I feel like this is a character who's been ripped from another game and moves like it, but at the same time he doesn't feel off in the game that he's landed in, because a middle ground has been struck regarding his physics to, for lack of a better term, make him compatible with the new game. This is what I mean when I say modders attempting to emulate a game's physics should make sure that ends up actually working in execution, and is probably my favourite part of playing as S3 Sonic. That's not to say that his actual moveset is bad, but at the same time, it's nothing special. For as much as the Insta-Shield is one of the most fondly remembered of the classic abilities, it isn't very exciting, and it's not as useful as it was in Sonic 3 when it gets translated into 3D. The increased damage hitbox just isn't as useful as it is in a 2D side-scroller, and because of the way SRB2 renders its visuals, it's really difficult to tell how large the Insta-Shield is. More on that once we start talking about the sprites. And then beyond that, the only other ability is a form of spin dash, where rather than naturally increase in power over time, you need to instead rev it by tapping jump. This is a controversial change, as I've seen plenty of comments expressing how they dislike it, but I think it's fun. It makes SRE Sonic yet more authentic to its inspiration, and while it is a bit more awkward than the original version, it helps set him apart from the sea of other Sonics just that tiny bit more. You can also use this to crouch, forcing the camera to angle downwards, and Custom 1 does the opposite. Not particularly useful in either direction, but another fun addition that continues to make him feel like the Sonic 3 Sonic has been plucked from that game and dropped into this one. S3 Sonic has a super form, and it is and does what you'd expect a super form to do. But when it comes to transformation from Sonic 3, that was never the star of the show. That honour, of course, goes to the infamous Hyper form, and that, alongside the Super Emeralds, have also made their way into SRB2. After collecting all 7 Chaos Emeralds, if you decide to continue collecting Emerald tokens, you'll find yourself locked out of the Super form and forced to collect the Super Emeralds, which is done by carrying the Emerald token to the end of the stage without being damaged. A tall order to do that 7 times, but your reward is the extra powerful Hyper Sonic, which acts as an even more extreme super form with an additional ability to dash in any direction at the same time as triggering a screen nuke. Unsurprisingly, this is a fantastic extra unlock, and it really bolsters S3 Sonic. Considering that his moveset isn't that special, he really needed all of the little flourishes and touches from Sonic 3 to really stand out, and seeing that the Hyper form is very much tied to Sonic 3, having never really appeared outside of that one game, it was an easy pick. It seems to be pretty faithful, even down to the potentially seizure-inducing prismatic effect, and I appreciate that it was given a unique unlock method. The only problem is that the mod apparently isn't very good at tracking how many Super Emeralds you've collected, and actually has a habit of resetting your progress every time you exit a save. Now, I can't verify that myself because I could never be bothered to do any emerald collection or always just cheat using Pandora's box commands, but if that is true, then it probably is the mod's biggest flaw. Collecting the Super Emeralds is a grind because you either need to repeatedly replay early zones like Green Flower to collect tokens without any risk, which is really boring, or hope you can make your way through the tougher stages without taking damage once. Doing all of that to play a little bit of Hypersonic, just to have to do it all over again the next time you play a sim, even on that same save file, sounds like a massive waste of time. It's fine if you only had to do it once, but every time you play, no chance that I'm doing that legitimately. I like the idea, and it does mean that unlocking such a powerful and exciting form does require a little bit of time investment and skill, but it needs to work properly, and if it is really broken like this, then it needs to be the highest priority fix in any future update. Custom Emeralds are always a little bit hit and miss when it comes to this, because I remember collecting many more than 7 Dark Emeralds as X-Sonic, but the Soul Emeralds of the Rush Characters pack worked pretty well, so maybe it would be wise to look at asking Inazuma and their team to ask how they managed to get it to work. I originally assumed that Blacknide had ripped most of S3 Sonic sprites from Sonic 3, using special stages and the Barrel of Doom and the like, and him and his co-artist have done such a good job emulating that art style that it took me a few seconds to realise how blatantly stupid an idea that was. Obviously, by nature of the perspective of both games, most of these sprites are in fact custom made, minus the small number where angles just happen to conveniently line up, but wow. I can't think of a mod that gets this aesthetically close to the piece of media they've taken a character from, with the obvious exception of certain characters who have just had their original sprite list ported in. They're so close, in fact, that I can't really criticize them without starting to complain about the Sonic 3 art style, because I do think that Sonic looks better in the other classic games, but then I'd be stepping beyond the scope of this review. S3 Sonic is supposed to emulate Sonic 3, so creating a character that looks this similar to the Sonic of that game is the ultimate fulfillment of the promise of the mod. You wouldn't want to edit the design to fix any problems present in the original design, because then you'd be straying away from the entire point of the mod. With that said, I do have one problem, which I mentioned earlier in the review, and that's the Insta-Shield. As it exists now, the Insta-Shield seems to use its sprites from Sonic 3, or at least something very similar. Problem is, of course, now we're playing in a 3D space, so the Insta-Shield's hitbox extends in front and behind Sonic. But because the Insta-Shield only visibly extends to either side of the player, it's difficult to judge where that hitbox is, especially because the hitbox seems to extend beyond the Insta-Shield effect. I don't think there needs to be a major overhaul here, but even something as simple as resizing, duplicating and rotating the effect could help to make things a lot clearer. In conclusion, S3 Sonic is a fantastic attempt at replicating the Sonic 3 experience in SRB2. If you were to download some mods to replace the UI and add in a Sonic 3 zone, as you can see in the background clip, you'd almost be fooled into thinking that you were playing some sort of 3D remake fan game, seeing as physics have been changed, the moveset is extremely authentic, and even the custom-made sprites are a perfect replication of the original art style. If not for the supposedly broken Super Emeralds and the awkward Insta-Shield, I'd have no complaints of my own. I've seen some people dislike the new spin dash or the physics changes, but they're both important to replicate the feeling of playing Sonic 3. I don't see anyone complain about Adventure Sonic replicating the movement of the Adventure era, so I don't see why people would complain about this. I'd recommend this mod to anyone. It's simple enough to not be a huge time sink to learn it, and I think the custom physics are interesting enough that you should really try them out at least once. But with that said and done, I hope you enjoyed the video, and ciao.